With elections this year expected to be extremely close, especially in contentious races like for the presidency, don't be surprised when you see recounts in certain states or counties this year. I'm Sophie from Democracy Docket, and today I'll be breaking down how recounts work and what to expect during the 2024 election.
Every election cycle, we see some number of recounts. So, whether it's at the congressional level or the state level or in a U.S. Senate race, or as we saw in 2020 at the presidential level, you can be guaranteed that there will be some number of recounts this November. Now, just because there can be a recount doesn't mean that the margin is close enough that the recount's going to make much difference. In fact, very rarely do recounts actually change the outcome of elections.
Every state has different rules for when and if recounts can be conducted.
Some states allow the losing candidate to request a recount regardless of the margin. So whether they've lost by 1 vote or 1 million votes, if they've lost, they can seek a recount. Other states have a threshold that either triggers an automatic recount or allows the losing candidate to seek a recount. And those thresholds are usually either 1% difference between the two candidates, or 0.5% of a difference between the two candidates, or even 0.25% between the difference between the two candidates. And so that's how it's decided whether you can seek a recount or not.
43 states allow people, which is usually the losing candidate, to request a recount by filing paperwork with election officials or in court. As Mark Elias explained, some states will only allow recounts to be requested if the margin between the vote count falls within a specific percentage or number of votes. In others, any candidate can request a recount no matter the margin of victory, as long as they pay for it. Many states stipulate that if the recount changes the outcome of the election, which is incredibly rare, the candidate will be reimbursed for the cost of the recount. In Northern California's Shasta County, a self-proclaimed MAGA candidate requested a hand recount of the primary she lost this March for the county's governing body, the Board of Supervisors. The recount was then canceled after the candidate did not pay the over $8,000 required to conduct the hand count. She then went on to also lose her lawsuit trying to overturn her loss in this election. We have also seen these candidate-requested recounts on a much larger scale. After the 2020 election, Donald Trump's campaign sought a statewide recount in Georgia and 2 counties in Wisconsin, claiming the process would prove widespread voter fraud. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. The Georgia recounts handed Trump a little fewer than 900 net ballots, but still confirmed that Biden won the state by over 11,000 votes.
It's been a long 34 days since the election on November 3rd. We have now counted legally cast ballots 3 times, and the results remain unchanged.
And in Wisconsin, the 2 recounts in Dane County and Milwaukee County ended with a net gain of 87 votes for Biden, directly refuting Trump's claims. A new Michigan law was enacted this summer to prevent recounts from being conducted due to unfounded allegations of voter fraud or in races with a wide margin victory where a recount will not affect the results. The law, signed by Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer in July, only allows recounts in the event that if the votes in question were reallocated to the losing side, it could flip the results of the election. Otherwise, a recount cannot be requested. When analyzing this bill, the State House Committee on Elections pointed out an example from the 2016 presidential election, where Green Party candidate Jill Stein requested a recount of ballots in Michigan, even though she received only 1.07% of the vote. The new law is aimed at preventing these types of recounts from occurring. In 27 states, state law requires that there automatically be a recount if the vote margin of the certified vote falls within a certain range. For example, Pennsylvania has an automatic recount if the vote margin is between 0.5% or less. There are usually specific short deadlines for when a Secretary of State must order that a recount be conducted. And in contrast to the requested recounts, these automatic recounts are usually paid for by the state.
Other places, particularly where they have those automatic thresholds, say, look, if it's a close enough election that it meets our state threshold, we're going to do the recount and the state is going to pay for the recount. So it varies very much by state who pays and what the threshold is.
Most states require that recounts be conducted after the election has been certified, so recounts don't usually delay certification of elections. However, in Pennsylvania, recount petitions are filed before election certification. A century-old law allows recounts to be requested before election certification if 3 voters in a precinct allege fraud or errors. All they need is $50. This antiquated law caused hundreds of recount petitions to be filed across the state during the 2022 midterms. These recount petitions resulted in delays in election certification in at least 3 counties, which in turn delayed the overall statewide certification. Separately, or in addition to recounts, numerous states require post-election audits of results, which are routine processes to ensure the accuracy of the voting equipment that was used. Over half of the states require these audits as a normal routine part of the elections process. Most of these audits involve pulling a random sample of a certain percentage of ballots to recount to compare to the vote totals to look for any discrepancies. Several states such as Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada have implemented what is called a risk-limiting audit. This type of audit is more rigorous and efficient, according to Verified Voting, a nonprofit organization researching the intersection of technology and election administration. After the 2020 election, numerous audits, including these risk-limiting audits, were conducted in numerous states, including in every single battleground state. None of them changed the outcome of the election in any state. Along with these routine audits and requested or automatic recounts, there may be lawsuits filed to stop a recount from happening. The most famous example of this was in Florida during the 2000 presidential election, where the margin between George Bush and Al Gore was just a few hundred votes. After an automatic recount was completed in Florida and narrowed Bush's victory even more after excluding certain ballots, multiple lawsuits were filed challenging how counties counted ballots with hanging chads, overvotes, undervotes, and the butterfly ballot design used in Palm Beach County. Gore sought a manual hand recount, and the Florida Supreme Court ordered counties to complete a hand recount of all undervotes, which were ballots that were missing a mark for certain offices. Bush immediately appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the court ended up reversing the Florida Supreme Court's order and blocked the hand recounts from occurring, handing Bush the presidency. As we head into the 2024 election, it's important to note that recounts don't just apply to elected offices, they also apply to ballot measures. With crucial abortion rights measures set to be on the ballot in at least 10 states this November, there might be recounts for these as well. In these instances, it is typically a voter that requests a recount as opposed to a candidate.
You can be sure of one thing, which is that we are almost certainly going to see some recounts after 2024. The question is how many.
Remember, recounts almost never flip the results of an election. According to a study by Fair Vote, a nonprofit group advocating for voting reforms to increase representation, there have only been 36 statewide recounts between 2000 and 2023 out of more than 6,929 statewide general elections. Of those races, only 3 changed the outcome of the election, and they only shifted the final vote margin by a few hundred votes. Despite what Trump and the Republican Party are claiming, our election system is incredibly secure and has numerous measures in place to ensure the accuracy of the results. Recounts are a part of that system, and states have rules set to conduct them when necessary. Thanks for watching Democracy Docket. If you want to stay up to date on the latest voting and election news, please make sure to subscribe to our newsletters. You can click the link right here or in the description of this video. I'm Sophie, and I'll see you next time.